مساء الخير. احذروا الدول الصغرى أو كيف تحول لبنان إلى ساحة لصراعات الشرق الأوسط. كتاب أكاديمي بدقته ومراجعه الواسعة، ولكن أيضاً كتاب صحافي بأسلوبه وبشغفه. كاتبه ديفيد هيرست، الكاتب والصحافي البريطاني اللي اتخذ من بيروت موطنه، واللي عايش حروب وصراعات الشرق الأوسط على مدى 5 عقود من خلال عمله بصحيفة الجارديان. ديفيد هيرست الصحافي اللي خطف مرتين في لبنان في الثمانينيات، واللي بتتهمه إسرائيل بالانحياز التام للعرب بوقت هو ضيف غير مرغوب أو مرحب فيه بأكثر من دولة عربية. ديفيد هيرست هو ضيفنا بترانزيت لليلة. مساء الخير ديفيد.
Good evening.
ديفيد، احذروا الدول الصغرى فهي دائما ضحية الدول الأكبر منها، لكنها أيضا مصدر أخطار عليها. هذا ما قاله ميخائيل باكونين، ويبدو أن نظرتك للبنان مماثلة لما قاله باكونين. دون شك أن لبنان هو ساحة للصراعات لدول الشرق الأوسط، ولكن اللي مش واضح يمكن بالكتاب كيف لبنان ممكن أن يكون مصدر أخطار على المحيط.
Let me tell you about the title first. I thought this was the perfect title for my book. I was not going to write the book unless I found this title. I knew there was a quotation of this kind relating to 19th century Europe, but I could not find it. I only found it by accident on the internet after almost giving up the project until I found it. It fits Lebanon perfectly. What Mikhail Bakunin was saying about the 19th century Europe was that small states, like, for example, Belgium or Latvia on the Baltic Sea, were victims of the ambitions and designs of larger states like the Russian Empire, like Germany under Bismarck. But they were also a source of trouble. They created trouble simply because they were an area of competition between the greater states. Now, I feel that Lebanon falls into this pattern even more dramatically than those states I mentioned in the 19th century Europe. Lebanon it seems to me, permanently plays this role of small state in the region. But in addition to being small, it is also what we call a sectarian state, and this gives greater opportunity for outside powers to intervene in its internal affairs. But they cause trouble to themselves. This competition causes trouble to themselves. The very fact that Lebanon is an arena of conflict like this means that these greater states come into collision with each other on Lebanese territory. Further,
نعم ديفيد، يعني بدي أحكي بالتفصيل بالموضوع الكتاب وبعدد من العناوين الأساسية اللي طرحتها، ولكن هل الكتاب هو عن لبنان؟ هل هو عن إسرائيل؟ أم هو عن إيران وحزب الله؟ أم هو أولاً وأخيراً كتاب عن فلسطين؟
The book evolved as I wrote it. In the end, we can say that it's about the whole Lebanon and the whole region, all those states and entities which you mentioned. But in point of fact, I knew it before, but I discovered it more and more as I was writing it. The main theme of a Middle Eastern conflict, namely the Arab-Israeli one, plays itself out on Lebanese territory more consistently, more continuously, in various different forms, than you can say of almost any other state or people in the region, except, of course, the Palestinians themselves.
طيب ديفيد، الكتاب يعني بدي جرب أعالج بعض العناوين اللي أنت شرحتها فيه. في 4 محطات بدي أتناولها. الأولى هي لبنان في النظرة أو في المشروع الصهيوني قبل دولة إسرائيل. يعني هون بدي أعترف لك بأنه عدد كبير من اللي قروا الكتاب، عدد كبير من الأشخاص هيك تحدثوا عن فكرة دليل سياحي بالعبري عن لبنان، انه كانت مفاجأة بالنسبة لهم، وبتنطوي على بتضوي على يعني بداية العلاقات بين لبنان والمهاجرين اليهود. النقطة الثانية اللي بدي أحكي فيها هي كيف عالجت بكتابك الثورة الإسلامية بإيران الصعود الشيعي في لبنان اللي كان موازي لهذه الثورة. النقطة الثالثة اللي هي أيضا مرتبطة بالنقطة الثانية واللي خصصت جزء كبير من الكتاب للحديث عنها، وهي حزب الله أو قراءتك لحزب الله بالتنقل بين العمل الجهادي والعمل المسلح وما أسميته البراغماتية أو التدريجية. النقطة الرابعة هي الحرب السابعة واللي يعني للأسف عم بتبشرنا فيها إنها قادمة. ديفيد، بدي بلش بالنقطة الأولى. يعني بتفتح الكتاب على مرحلة بتعتبرها أنها مركزية بالنسبة لمآسي الشرق الأوسط، واللي هي مرحلة الاستيطان اليهودي في فلسطين. يعني بس يمكن في إضافة بكتابك أنه هي كيف نظر اليهود إلى لبنان قبل قيام دولة لبنان وقبل قيام دولة إسرائيل. يعني اشرح لي كيف وصلنا لنطبع ببيروت الدليل السياحي بالعبري، كيف انتقلنا من مرحلة تبادل تجاري واستثمارات متبادلة إلى مرحلة العداء.
Yes, a lot of people who've read the book have highlighted this thing. It seems unimaginable now, I know, that the Lebanese should have been hosting Jewish Palestinian guests in their hotels and even going to the point of bringing in Hebrew newspapers from Palestine and having kosher chefs in their hotels. That is indeed what happened. The Israelis, or the Zionists as they were at that time, were looking for allies wherever they could find them from the very origins of their enterprise in Palestine. In those days, of course, they were not a state, they were weak, they were dependent on the British to help them to create what eventually became a state. They felt that in what they called Christian Lebanon of the time, they had a natural ally. And they felt that those Christians, principally Maronites, some of them at least, shared this belief that the Zionists would be a natural ally for them too. This was because they had, I suppose, basically a minority complex. They felt that this could strengthen them against what they felt to be an unsympathetic, even a hostile environment. And so contacts developed between them, and they developed quite extensively. However, there were differences of opinion, of course, within the Maronite community. There were those, what I call in my book, the pro-Zionists, who were ready to go the whole way in some such future relationship. There were others whom I call the Arabists, who recognized that though a minority, their destiny lay with their natural environment, which was there in Lebanon, their Muslim compatriots, and in the Arab world as a whole, they're predominantly Muslim fellow Arabs as well. So there was a constant sort of conflict within the Maronite community over this whole issue from the very first contacts, which took place essentially before the First World War, but developed quite strongly in the 20s, until the formation of the state.
ديفيد، يعني بدي أقرأ فقرة صغيرة من الكتاب واللي أنت أيضا أخذتها عن أحد المؤسسين الأساسيين لحزب الليكود، واللي يمكن بتصلح اليوم أنه تكون كأن كلام بيصدر عن بنيامين نتنياهو رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي. بتقول نقلا عن جابوتينسكي: كل شعب أصلي سوف يقاوم الاستيطان الأجنبي طالما رأوا أن هناك أمل من التخلص من خطر الاستيطان، فهكذا سوف يتصرف الفلسطينيون طالما احتفظوا ببصيص أمل بأنهم سوف يمنعون فلسطين من أن تتحول إلى أرض إسرائيل. أي اتفاق بإرادة حرة لن يتحقق، وهكذا فعلينا إما أن نوقف جهودنا الاستيطانية أو نتابع الاستيطان دون أن نعير أي أهمية لإرادة السكان الأصليين. الاستيطان يمكن أن يستمر ويتطور وراء حائط فولاذي لن يكون بإمكانهم أن يهدموه. يعني هذا الكلام اللي صدر بالعام 1923 لفلاديمير تشابوتنسكي واللي هو مؤسس حزب الليكود، يعني هاي الكلمات تصلح اليوم كأنها يقولها بنيامين نتنياهو.
Well, yes, essentially, I think they are. I think the Zionists recognized, in fact, realistically, that they, after some initial attempts to win some Arab sympathy for the notion of setting up a Jewish national home, as it was called in those days, they realized that their Palestinian and Arab environment would be essentially hostile to what they were trying to do. Recognizing that, they decided that force was really the only way they could achieve their aims. And it began, of course, in a small way, but they were preparing to use force from the very beginning. Herzl's writings were among the most earliest of that kind. And it came to a head in what was the premeditated usurpation of Palestine in 1948. They say that that came about because the Arabs attacked the Zionists at that time. Of course, the Arabs did attack the Zionists. They did seek to prevent the formation of this state. But the real aggression from the very beginning was theirs. Essentially, the Arabs' action was a reaction. And this was premeditated, force which eventually reached the point of massive ethnic cleansing. But the Iron Wall continues to this day. The Israelis rely, in the final analysis, on force. They will not relinquish that option unless they are forced to, and their reliance on it enables them so far to maintain themselves in this region in the way that they do, in spite of the absence of a peaceful settlement and all the world's attempts to achieve a peaceful settlement.
ديفيد، يعني جيفري وودكروفت واللي هو من صحيفة الواشنطن بوست بيقول عنك أنك مؤرخ منحاز، ولكن هذا لا يعني أنك غير صادق. كتابك يعني هو إدانة ليس فقط يعني لإسرائيل اليوم أو بالعام 2006 ولا حتى بالعام 1982. كتابك هو إدانة لفكرة إسرائيل بحد ذاتها. ألا تتحول إلى مراقب منحاز إلى الجانب الفلسطيني؟ يعني
No, I don't think I am, actually. I would like to cite a colleague of mine, namely Robert Fisk, who mentioned me in a complimentary way in a recent article in which he said David Hirst manages to take the Palestinian side or present the Palestinian case or the Arab case without any romanticizing of the Palestinians. So no, I don't consider myself biased, but no.
يعني ما بتخاف إنك تنوضع بهالخانة؟
Well, I don't mind if I'm called biased. I don't mind if I'm called unobjective, provided I believe that what I'm saying is the most well-researched and honest attempt to state
صحيح.
reality.
كتابك يعني كتير، نحن قلنا بالمقدمة أنه أكاديمي وعنده مراجع عديدة وكتير دقيق، ولكن ما بتعتبر أنه يعني بتخاف أنه تنوضع بمناهضة، أو حتى يمكن البعض بيقول أنه كتابك هو بحد ذاته إدانة لإسرائيل.
I don't think this gentleman you're talking about said that I said it's a condemnation of Israel. I think you're wrong on that point. I think he's saying that it's
لا
possible.
أنا ما عم بعني جيفري، عم بعني إنه البعض بيعتبر كتابك إدانة لإسرائيل.
Well, I suppose you could say that it's certainly, yes, it's a, look, let's put it this way. I don't think in any conflict in the world there is such a thing as total objectivity by an outside observer. But let me put it simply this way. I believe that in this conflict is a rare case in which one side is infinitely more responsible for the conflict than the other. I mean, if I was to put it in quantitative terms, I mean, instinctivly I would look in any conflict with which I'm not familiar, I would try to find both sides, judge the relative responsibility. And my starting point would probably be that it's 50-50. In this case, I feel that it's not that it's probably, let's say, 10-15% one side. And